Hi, my name's Mark. I'm going to create a series of videos that does one thing and one thing only. It's going to take a scientific paradigm that is widely known, completely accepted, totally understood, and completely sucks, and we're going to reject it. We're then going to invent a new paradigm that nobody knows, nobody understands, and nobody accepts. And we're going to make it so that it doesn't suck. Specifically, I'm talking about the scientific paradigm of the genetic code. This was invented 7 decades ago. It can be completely explained and understood by using this prop, which is called a codon table. And this paradigm says that there is a code of molecular behavior that explains how DNA becomes protein. And this code can be understood by this table called a codon table that involves a single experimental correlation between DNA and protein. And this correlation is simple and linear, and it defines the language of life, okay? Now this is a false paradigm. It's a false belief system. It is logically incoherent. It is impossible to believe. It fails empirically every time it's tested, but yet they keep teaching it to little kids. That's insane. Now, there's an alternative. What we can do is take that paradigm, which only says false things, and say the opposite of that paradigm, which are true things. And then we will shift a false paradigm to a true paradigm. We will change our beliefs that this garbage is true to something that is actually true. Now, what that's going to require is A, a willingness to change your beliefs, which they do not have, and B, an amazingly large amount of imagination. We're going to have to use our imaginations to come up with something that actually works, that is true. So we'll just start by saying that it's not a single correlation that's simple and linear. It's actually a code. It involves math, it involves logic, it is complex, and it is nonlinear. What they did was they came out and they said, here is a code, but they failed to actually describe a code. It's nothing more than a hoax. They knew it wasn't a code, but they called it a code. They described it like they knew what they were talking about. They clearly did not. Now, if you are a scientist, then you do not believe a word that I'm saying, I am a heretic. And there's all kinds of scientists out there. So I have developed a simple test to see if you are a scientist. I call it the flashlight test. If I give you this flashlight and I ask you to find your ass with it, and you cannot, that is a positive flashlight test. That means you're a scientist. That means that if I try and describe this to you, you're going to do several things. Number one, you're going to tell me that I don't understand science and that there's exceptions to every rule. Number two, you're going to try and tell me that there's no difference between what you're saying and what I'm saying. And then when that fails, you're going to tell me that this is meaningless. This doesn't matter. Okay, that's insane. The genetic code is the most meaningful thing on earth. It's the most interesting thing. It's also the most important thing in science because it could teach us so much if we just try to understand it. Okay? What we're going to do is we're going to treat it seriously as a code. And instead of making this narrow, useless observation about proteins, we're going to look at the code as if it's something mathematical and logical that applies to all of life since the beginning of time. Not just a little bit of life, but all of it. This code is responsible for taking an earth that has no life and creating an earth that has all life. It's also responsible for the miracles that we know that life performs, like taking one cell and creating 37 trillion cells with a code. Okay? We need to realize they're telling us there's no spatial information in the code, there's no math, there's no logic. I'm telling you the code is purely spatial. It exists before the molecules that make it. They're saying that the molecules define the table. That's absurd, okay? The table, the code, the spatial logic, the math existed. That's why there are molecules to execute it. The molecules execute the code. What they are doing is things that are highly improbable. They're making them happen. It's a probability code. The molecular behavior is highly improbable, but because life has learned this code and uses it, these behaviors become highly likely. They're saying these simple things must happen because they're simple. I'm saying that these things do happen because they're incredibly complex, very nonlinear. It's exactly like artificial intelligence. In fact, the code is an intelligence. The molecules are learning. That's what natural selection is. Okay, so we can use this prop, which is garbage, and teach children nonsense to confuse them. This codon table doesn't even contain any codons. You have to define the codons first before you put the molecules in it. The molecules are not the codons. This is a codon table that is mathematically correct. It will do everything that this table does, just as well, maybe better, okay? But it does thousands of things that this table cannot do. So if you're looking for a starting point, if you want to be able to find your ass with a flashlight, then the very first thing you have to do is make a commitment to understanding. And then you have to choose your tools that help you understand. If you choose this one, you're done. Just quit. Go away. We don't need to hear it, okay? If you choose this one, you've got a chance. You have the ability to understand the things that will help us understand how the universe works, how life formed, what it's doing, and how. So, it's going to take a while. This ain't going to be easy. You can't learn the genetic code in 2 minutes. Okay? It's going to take a lifetime. And I doubt that this thing is so complex, I doubt that any human's even capable of comprehending it. But we're going to give it our best shot. We're going to put on our big boy pants and get busy.